She was standing on the other side of the door with a rolling suitcase and a phone screen facing me that showed the exact same confirmation number as mine. I looked at her screen, she looked at mine. Outside, snow had started. My name is Owen Reeves. I'm 34 years old and I work as an architectural restoration specialist based in Asheville, North Carolina. I assess old buildings, determine what can be saved, what can't, how to bring something back without making it into something it never was. It's careful, slow work. Most people think it sounds boring. I've never been able to explain why it doesn't feel that way to me, why standing inside a wall that's been standing for 120 years and figuring out what it needs is the closest thing I have to a language I speak fluently. I rent the same cabin every year, the same week. Same mountain, same road, same view of the ridge from the south window. The rental company calls it Cabin 4, but I think of it as the place where I can hear myself think without having to explain to anyone why I need to. I bring graph paper and charcoal pencils, and whatever book I've been carrying for 3 months without opening. I don't bring my work phone. This year I needed it more than usual. 6 months ago, my partner of 4 years told me I was never fully there. Not in a dramatic way, she wasn't wrong and she wasn't cruel about it. She just said, "Owen, I don't think you know how to be in the room with someone. You're always slightly somewhere else." She left on a Tuesday. I kept the apartment and started working more. That's the kind of thing I'm good at. I arrived at Cabin 4 at 2 in the afternoon on a Friday in January. The road up had been cleared, but was starting to get slick again. I unloaded the car, found the key box, turned the heat on, put the kettle on, and opened my graph paper on the table by the south window. I had been there for approximately 40 minutes. Then someone knocked on the door. I opened it. She was about 30, dark auburn hair coming out of whatever she'd tied it into on the drive up. Gray-blue eyes with the particular sharpness of someone who's been looking at things professionally long enough that the habit doesn't switch off. Camera bag on one shoulder, rolling suitcase behind her, and her phone screen facing me with a confirmation number I recognized because it was also on my phone. "Hi," she said. "Hi, this is Cabin 4? Yes. Ridgeline Rentals, blue door, south-facing porch? Yes." She looked past me into the cabin, then back at me. "I have a reservation. So do I." She showed me her phone. I showed her mine. Same confirmation number, same cabin, same dates. She looked at both screens for a moment like she was waiting for one of them to be wrong. "Did you book through the website?" she said. 3 months ago. "I booked 4 months ago. Then you booked first." Apparently that didn't matter. I stepped back. "Come in, it's cold." She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she came in. She looked at the graph paper on the table by the window, the open kettle, my coat on the chair, the specific arrangement of someone who had already decided where everything was going. "I'll call the rental company," she said. "They're closed. Website says they close at noon on Fridays." "They have an emergency number. It goes to voicemail. I already tried." She looked at me. "You tried already?" "When I saw the second set of tire tracks in the driveway," she processed this. "So you knew someone else was coming?" "I suspected." "And you didn't leave a note or—" "I wanted to see what we were dealing with first." She pulled off her coat. She had the look of someone recalibrating a plan that had seemed very solid 30 minutes ago. "How many bedrooms?" "2. Bathrooms? 1 full, 1 half." She looked at the south window. The ridge was already disappearing into gray. The snow was coming down properly now. "How bad is that road going to get?" "By tonight? I wouldn't drive it." She turned to look at me. "So there's firewood. The heat works. There's enough in the kitchen for several days if we're careful." I kept my voice level. "Unless you'd rather I leave." She looked at the window again, then at me. "I don't want you to leave in this," she said. "That's not what I meant. Then we share the cabin. For how long?" "Until the road's clear or the company opens Monday morning." She was quiet for a second. "My name is Lena," she said. "Owen." She picked up the handle of her rolling suitcase. "Which bedroom?" "Take the one with the south window, better light." "That's yours." It was. "Take it." She looked at me. "Why?" "Because you have a camera and I have graph paper." Something in her expression shifted, not warmth exactly, but the beginning of something that could become it. "Okay," she said. Thank you. She went down the hall. I heard her door close, not hard, just shut. I stood in the kitchen and looked at the kettle and thought about what my ex-partner had said, that I was always slightly somewhere else. I had driven 6 hours to be alone with my graph paper, and here I was, 40 minutes in, making room for a stranger. The specific absurdity of it didn't escape me. What I didn't expect was for it to feel less strange by morning than it did that first hour. Her name was Lena Marsh, and she was a photographer based in Nashville. I learned this over the first evening in the way you learn things about people when you're sharing a kitchen and neither of you has anywhere else to be. She was shooting a project for a travel magazine, a series on stillness in mountain landscapes. Places without people, she said. Places that showed what things look like before humans decided to organize them. Is that harder than it sounds? I asked. She considered it. The hardest part is waiting for the light, she said. Most people leave before the light is right. They come for the view and then they go. The shot is usually about 20 minutes after they've already decided there's nothing there. I told her about the cabin, that I'd been coming for 4 years, that I used the week to draw, that the ridge from the south window in January had a quality of light I hadn't found anywhere else. She looked interested in a way that wasn't polite interest, the real kind. What do you draw? She said. Buildings. Work buildings? Sometimes. Mostly old ones I've been inside. I can't always explain on paper what a building needs, so I draw it first. That's restoration. That's the part nobody sees, I said. She made dinner. Not because I asked her to, because she looked in the refrigerator and the cabinets and said, I can do something with this, in the tone of someone who means it. Pasta with what was in the pantry, a salad from what was left of the produce she'd brought. She cooked the way she apparently photographed, without fuss, with complete attention to what was in front of her. I set the table. You don't have to, she said. I know. I'm serious. You don't. Lena, I'm setting 2 plates. That's all that's happening. She looked at me sideways and then turned back to the stove. We ate dinner at the table by the now dark south window. Outside, the snow was still falling. The wood stove was doing its job, and the cabin had the specific warmth of a small space properly heated, the kind that settles into your shoulders. Why do you come here alone? She asked. Because I work better when I can't explain myself to anyone. What does that mean? I thought about it. When someone else is there, I spend energy managing what they think of what I'm doing. Here I don't have to. She nodded slowly. I know that, she said. I know exactly that. The magazine project, and everything before it. She looked at her plate. My last relationship ended because apparently I photographed everything. He said I experienced life through a viewfinder instead of just living it. A pause. He wasn't entirely wrong, but he also wasn't entirely right. What was the right part? That I see things a certain way. That the way I see them takes time. And the wrong part, she looked up, that seeing something carefully isn't the same as not being there. I held on to that for the rest of the evening, and something else landed quietly alongside it. L. Marsh, Nashville, photographer. Mountain landscapes. 6 weeks ago, I had sent Marcus a link to a journal series. The byline had registered as initials and a surname. I hadn't noted the full name carefully. Now I was sitting across a table from someone named Lena Marsh, who shot mountain landscapes, and I was doing the arithmetic the way I did everything, slowly, without committing to a conclusion until the evidence was complete. The journal series had been labeled as Eastern Tennessee. Her current project was for a travel magazine. A different commission, possibly a different photographer. Lena Marsh was not an unusual combination of names. I didn't say anything, not because I was concealing it, because I wasn't certain. And I had learned, in buildings as in other things, that you don't name what you're looking at until you're sure you've identified it correctly. I was up at 5:30 the way I always am when I'm here. Something about the mountain air resets whatever's been keeping me in bed past 6 for months. The cabin was cold in the way of a place whose fire has burned down overnight. I added wood to the stove and filled the coffee maker and stood at the south window while it ran. The snow had stopped. The ridge was pale and sharp in the pre-dawn, the kind of view I'd been driving 6 hours for. I pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet. I didn't examine why, I just did it. Lena came out of the south bedroom at 6:50 with her camera bag already on her shoulder and her coat in her hand. She stopped when she saw the two mugs. How did you know I'd be up? You have a camera and there's new snow on the ridge. She looked at the window. Something shifted in her face, the specific look of someone who sees what they came here for. I have to go out, she said. I know. I'll be back. Lena, I handed her the mug. Go take your photographs. She took it. She held it for a second longer than was necessary. Black, she said. Yes. How did you know? I watched you make coffee last night. She looked at me in a way I didn't have a category for yet. Then she went out the door. I sat at the table with my graph paper. Outside the window, I could see her moving through the snow below the ridge, the camera coming up, then down, then up again. The patient repetition of someone who knows what they're looking for and is willing to wait for it. I drew a building I'd been trying to get right for 2 months. For the first time in those 2 months, the line came easily. I didn't ask myself why. She was gone for 3 hours. When she came back, her boots were wet through and her cheeks were red, and she had the expression of someone who has just spent 3 hours doing exactly the thing they were meant to do. She sat down at the table across from me and pulled the camera out and started going through the shots. I wasn't looking. I was working. But the way she moved through the images, the speed of some, the long pauses on others, I started to understand the rhythm of how she edited in real time. Fast on the ones that almost worked, slow on the ones that did. After a while, she turned the camera toward me. What do you see? I looked. It was the ridge from below, the tree line at the bottom of the frame, the snow above, and in the upper left corner, barely visible, the edge of a rock formation that looks like a doorway, I said. She looked at me. No one has ever said that. That's what it is. I know. She turned the camera back. I've shown that photo to 6 people. They all said mountain or snow or nice. You saw the door. I went back to my drawing. After a moment, she said, "Can I see what you're working on?" I turned the graph paper toward her. She studied it for a long time. The building was a warehouse I'd been commissioned to assess. 4 stories, 1890s construction, brick and timber, the specific proportion of a building that was made to last. I'd drawn it the way I always drew things, not from outside looking at the whole, but from inside looking at the walls, the way the light would come through at different hours, the small figures I put in every drawing to show scale. "They're all looking at the same window," she said. I looked at my own drawing. What? The figures, they're all looking at the same spot. She pointed at the upper left corner of the drawing, a high window, the one I always put the most work into. Why? I didn't answer right away, because the answer was something I hadn't said out loud before. "That's where the light is best," I said finally. "Every building has one place where the light is exactly right. I put the people there so whoever reads the drawing knows where to stand." She was quiet. "You've been doing this for how long?" 8 years, and no one has ever noticed?" I looked at the drawing. My ex-partner said I put too many details in the margins. Lena set the camera down. She looked at me with the expression that said she had just filed something important. The second day was when the rhythm found itself. Lena went out at dawn. I drew until noon. She came back. We ate whatever was simplest. She edited, and I drew. And in the late afternoon, when the light changed, we both stopped working and made coffee and looked at the ridge and talked. She had grown up in Knoxville, the youngest of 3, the one who got quiet at family dinners and started drawing faces on napkins at age 7 and couldn't explain why. She'd studied visual arts at UT, had done 3 years at a Nashville agency shooting product and corporate, had left to go freelance because she couldn't stop thinking about light and kept using it wrong for other people's purposes. "Wrong how?" I said. "Too honest," she said. "They want the light to say buy this." My light always asked questions. I told her about the warehouse, about what it meant to walk into a building that had been standing for 130 years and understand that your job was not to make it new but to make it stay. "Most clients want new," I said. "They want the look of old with the bones of something that doesn't need maintenance. And you give them the actual old, which requires more trust and more patience than most people want to give." She smiled. The light that asks questions. Something like that. That evening, she showed me 300 photographs on her laptop. Not to share, she was editing and I happened to be there. But I watched from across the table and started to understand what she was looking for. Not the dramatic, not the obvious. The moment just before or just after, the snow that had almost settled, the branch almost in frame, the doorway almost visible, the threshold. Everything she found was standing at a threshold. I didn't say this. I thought about it until I fell asleep. What I hadn't told her yet, and wasn't sure how to, was that I'd sent a link to her online journal series to someone 6 weeks before I ever knew her name. I'd seen her work online before I knew who she was. 6 weeks earlier, researching photographers for a colleague who was putting together a book on vernacular architecture, I'd come across a series she'd published in a small online journal, mountain images from eastern Tennessee, all taken at threshold moments, all lit the way I'd spent 8 years trying to explain in drawings. I'd sent the link to Marcus Reed, the editor of a regional architecture and landscape publication I'd been working with for 3 years. I'd said, "I don't know this person, but her work belongs in print, the real kind." Marcus had reached out to the journal. The journal had forwarded the inquiry. Lena had received an email 2 weeks ago, before this trip, asking if she'd be interested in a commissioned series. She hadn't responded yet because she didn't know if it was serious or what it would cost her in time. She told me this over dinner on the first night without connecting it to anything. She didn't know I was the connection. I hadn't planned to tell her, but I understood by the end of the second day that I was going to have to. That night the wood stove burned low and neither of us noticed until the room went cold. I got up and added wood. Lena was still at the table with her laptop, the blue light on her face. She didn't look up. I didn't say anything. I went back to bed. Some silences are comfortable because nothing is wrong. That was the kind. The rental company owner arrived on Sunday morning. His name was Dale Whitfield. He was about 60, drove a late model pickup, and had the particular energy of someone who had decided on the drive up what was going to happen, and had no interest in revising it. He knocked twice, and didn't wait for an answer before trying the handle. I got to the door before it opened. "Morning," he said. "I understand there's been a booking issue." "There has," I said. "2 valid reservations. Same dates, same cabin. These things happen. System error." He smiled the way people smile when they've already decided the apology is sufficient. "The good news is we have availability at our sister property. 30 minutes down the mountain," I said. "I saw it on your website. $300 more per night." The smile held. "Prices vary by property. We're staying," I said, "both of us. We have valid reservations. The week isn't over. Technically, the booking system prioritizes. We have confirmation numbers. Same number, both issued by your company. That's your error, not ours." Lena appeared behind me. She had her phone out. "I've screenshotted both confirmations," she said. "Timestamped. If there's a legal question about who has priority, I'm happy to make some calls." Dale looked at her, then at me, then back to the professional smile. "I'll need to review the booking records," he said. "You do that," I said. "The road's open if you need to get back." He left. Lena and I stood in the doorway and watched his truck turn around. "He's going to try again," she said. "Probably. Will the confirmations actually hold? I don't know, but he doesn't know we don't know." She looked at me, then she laughed. A real one. Bright and sudden and surprised out of her. It was the first time I'd heard her laugh without something careful around it. "Come back inside," I said. "The coffee's getting cold." That afternoon she found the journal entry. Not because I left it out. I don't keep a journal. But she was looking at the small online architecture publication on her laptop, Marcus's magazine. And she found a page where the editor's recent correspondence was partially visible in a screenshot a contributor had posted. My name was in it. A message forwarding a link, her link. She turned the laptop toward me. "Owen," I looked at the screen. "Yes. This is 6 weeks ago." "Yes." "You sent Marcus Reed my work." "Yes." She looked at me for a long moment. "I didn't know you then." "No." "You'd never met me." "No." "I'd seen your work in a journal. I thought it was the best mountain photography I'd seen in years, and I knew Marcus was looking for a commissioned series. I sent him the link. Without telling me. You didn't know me." I paused. I didn't think it was mine to announce. She looked back at the screen, then at me. Something was moving through her face that I couldn't read completely. Not anger, not exactly. The expression of someone processing something that doesn't fit the category they had available. Why, she said. Why did you do it? I thought about how to answer honestly. Because the work existed and the person who needed to see it hadn't seen it. That seemed like a solvable problem. And you just solved it without being asked. Yes, nobody does that. I know. She set the laptop down. She looked at the south window. Outside, the light was doing the thing it did at 4 in the afternoon in January, going gold and horizontal. The ridge catching it at an angle that made everything look like it had been waiting all day to look exactly like that. I haven't responded to Marcus yet, she said. I know, he mentioned it. You're still in touch with him? He's a colleague. Does he know you're here? No. She was quiet for a long time. I didn't try to fill it. Outside, the light was doing what the light does, moving, changing, going towards something. The figures in your drawings, she said finally. Yes, they're all standing at the window where the light is best. Yes, that's what you look for, the place where the light is right. That's what the work is, I said. She turned from the window to look at me. You looked at my photographs and did that, she said. Found where the light was and sent someone to it. I didn't answer. I didn't think I needed to. That evening was different from the ones before. Not dramatically. We made dinner the same way we had. She cooked. I set the table. We sat at the window. But something in the air between us had changed the way the air in a room changes when a window gets opened. The same room, the same people, less pressure on the inside. She told me about the email from Marcus, what it had said, what it was asking for, why she hadn't answered. It felt too big, she said, and I didn't know if I trusted the source. You still don't know if you trust it, I said. I'm not a photography editor. No, but you looked at 300 photographs over 2 evenings without being asked to, and you found the ones that were different. She looked at her coffee cup. That's not nothing. Reply to him, I said. I'm thinking about it. What's there to think about? What if it's not as good as you think? Then you'll learn that from a professional who tell you specifically why, which is more useful than not knowing. She looked at me. You're very sure about other people's work. Other people's work is easier than your own. Always. She picked up her coffee. Is that why you come here? Because here your work is easier? I thought about that. Here there's no one to explain myself to, so I stop explaining and just draw. I thought you were going to say you come here to be alone. I did come here to be alone. And I looked at the south window. The ridge was dark now, just a shape against the sky. And it turns out that's not exactly what I needed, I said. She didn't say anything, but she stayed at the table. The last morning was a Monday. The road had been cleared by 7. The rental company would open at 9. Lena had her camera bag repacked. I had my graph paper rolled and tied. The cabin looked the way it always looked when I left. Like it had held what I needed and was ready to hold the next thing. We loaded our cars in the particular silence of 2 people who haven't decided yet what to say. I went back for the last 2 things on the table. When I came out, she was standing beside her car, not getting in. Owen, yeah, the figures in the drawings, the ones at the window, yeah. Do they ever look back? I thought about all the drawings I'd done over 8 years. The small figures, always facing in toward the wall, toward the window, toward the light. Always looking at the building, never at the viewer. No, I said, they never look back. She looked at me. Maybe they should. I set the box down on the hood of my car. You sent Marcus my work before you knew me, she said. Yes, because you saw something. Yes, and now you know me. Yes. She was still looking at me with the expression I had been trying to categorize for 3 days and had finally understood was simply the way she looked when she was seeing something clearly. I replied to Marcus this morning, she said. Good. I told him I'd do the series. Good. I also told him I'd met the person who sent him my work. And, he said, she almost smiled, I figured he'd find a way to run into you eventually. I looked at her. I didn't plan this. I know. I came here to be alone. I know that too. She tilted her head. It didn't work. No, I said, it didn't. She looked at the cabin door. This is your week every year. Yes, same cabin, same dates. For 4 years. So next year, I said, I'll book 2 bedrooms. She looked at me for a long moment. Something in her face went very still and then very clear. The specific expression of someone who has stopped looking for what they expected and started seeing what was actually there. "Okay," she said, and then, "Come find me before next January." "Where?" "Nashville," she said. "I'll be the one at the window." She got in her car. I stood in the driveway until her taillights disappeared around the first turn. Then I went back to the cabin. I don't know why. I just wasn't ready to drive yet. The south window was still getting the morning light. I sat down at the table where the graph paper had been, and I looked at the ridge, and I thought about the figures in every drawing I'd done for 8 years. The small people at the window where the light was best, all facing in, none of them looking back. I took out a fresh sheet of graph paper. I drew the cabin, the south wall, the window, the ridge beyond, and in the window I put one figure. And for the first time in 8 years, the figure was looking out. I drove to Nashville 3 weeks later. I told myself I was there for a meeting with a client. That was true. There was a client. There was a meeting. It was on a Thursday. I extended the trip to Friday without examining my reasons too carefully. I texted Lena on Thursday afternoon, "In Nashville through tomorrow." She wrote back in 4 minutes. "There's a coffee shop on Fatherland Street. 6 o'clock. Bring a drawing." I brought 3. She was already at a table by the window when I arrived. She had her camera on the table, a coffee she hadn't touched, and the specific posture of someone who had arrived early and was pretending they hadn't. I sat down across from her. She pushed the coffee toward me, without looking at the menu. "How did you know?" "I watched you order coffee for 4 days," she said. I spread the 3 drawings on the table. She looked at each one. She took her time. She didn't say anything until she'd seen all 3. "This one," she said, pointing at the third. "The cabin, the south window, the figure looking out." "When did you draw this?" "The morning you left." She looked at the figure in the window. "That's different. I know. They never look out." "They do now," I said. She picked up the drawing and held it the way she held the photograph she was going to keep, with both hands at an angle to the light. "Can I have this?" "Yes." "What do you want for it?" I thought about what I actually wanted. "Show me what you've been shooting since the cabin," I said. "On real paper, printed." "That takes time. I'm not in a hurry." She set the drawing down and looked at me. The light through the coffee shop window was doing something to the table and the coffee cups and her face, that late afternoon thing that makes everything look like it was arranged on purpose. I didn't say this. I was fairly certain she already saw it. We stayed at that table for 3 hours, long after the coffees were finished, long after the place had filled and thinned around us, long after the light changed to the flat dark of a winter evening and the window showed us our own reflections instead of the street. When we finally stood to go, she put on her coat and picked up the drawing and said, "Next January. Next January. Same cabin, I said. "Already booked." She looked at me. "Both bedrooms." "Both bedrooms," I said, "in case." She laughed. "The same one from the doorway with Dale Whitfield, bright and sudden and completely unguarded." I thought about the line she'd said over dinner at the cabin, that her ex had said she experienced life through a viewfinder instead of living it. Standing on Fatherland Street in January with her laughing at something I'd said, I understood what the wrong part of that was. She wasn't behind the viewfinder to stay away from things. She was behind it because it was the way she got close enough to see. Same as me. Different tools. Same instinct. The months between January and the next January had a quality I hadn't expected. Not longing exactly, I'm not sure that's the right word for it, more like the specific awareness of a person in your peripheral vision. I wasn't looking at her, but I knew where she was. She sent me a photograph in March. No message, just the image. The ridge from the cabin in winter, the south window visible at the edge of the frame, the light at the exact angle it had been the morning she'd gone out before I woke up. I looked at it for a long time and then set my phone down and went back to the building I was assessing. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure what to say that the looking hadn't already communicated. Marcus published her series in the April issue. 7 photographs, mountain landscapes from 3 different ranges, all shot at threshold moments, all lit the way I'd recognized before I knew who she was. The editor's note called her work patient and precise. The kind of seeing that can't be learned. I read the note twice and then cut it out and put it in the folder with my drawing of the cabin. She texted me in June. I'm shooting in Asheville next week. I wrote back, I know a building you should see. She wrote, I know you do. We spent a Thursday afternoon in a 1910 warehouse on the south side of the city. She photographed, and I explained what I was seeing in the walls and the floor and the way the roof let light down at a specific angle in the late afternoon. She listened the way she listened to everything, completely. When we were done, she stood in the middle of the main floor and turned the camera toward me. Stand there, she said, don't move. I'm not. Owen, stand there. I stood there. She took the photograph. She showed it to me afterward. Me in the warehouse, looking up at the light coming through the roof. The walls around me. The specific posture of someone who belongs in a place. You do that, she said. You stand in them. It's my job. No, she looked at the image. It's something else. I didn't argue. We had dinner after, same dynamic as the coffee shop, long past the end, talking about work and then talking about everything else. The restaurant thinning around us without either of us noticing. She talked about where the series was going, a book she'd been asked to pitch. I talked about the warehouse, what it needed, what it could become, the specific problem of a building that everyone thought should be different than what it was. What do you want it to be? She said. What it is, I said, just more itself. She looked at me. That's the same answer for everything. Most things, I said. She looked at the table, then at me. Next January, she said. Next January, I said. Neither of us elaborated. We didn't need to. The following January, we arrived at cabin 4 20 minutes apart. I was there first. I had the heat on, the kettle going, 2 mugs out, the graph paper on the table by the south window. The knock came at 2:40. I opened the door. She was standing there with her rolling suitcase and her camera bag and her coat coming loose in the mountain air and the same gray-blue eyes that had been the first thing I'd registered a year ago when she'd shown me a phone screen with a confirmation number I recognized. I have a reservation, she said. So do I said. She looked past me into the cabin, the 2 mugs, the graph paper, the south window already filling with ridge light. Same number again, she said. Different numbers, I said. Both valid. She stepped inside. She looked at the table, at the 2 mugs, at the window. Owen, yeah, I printed the photographs. I know. I saw the series in Marcus's issue. Not those. She set the camera bag down and pulled a folder from the side pocket of her suitcase. She held it out. These. I opened the folder. Inside were 12 photographs printed on good paper, each one labeled in small handwriting at the bottom corner. The first 8 were landscapes, the ridge from the morning after the snow, the tree line, the rock formation doorway, the window light at 4 o'clock. The last 4 were the cabin interior, the table, the graph paper, the south window with the ridge through it, and in the last one, at the table shot from the doorway, a figure in profile, looking at the window, me, without my knowing, working. She had photographed me the way I drew, the person at the place where the light was best, facing in, seeing the thing. I looked at it for a long time. When did you take this? Second morning, you were drawing. I was at the door. I didn't know. That's when the real ones happen, she said, when people don't know. I looked at her. She was watching me look at the photograph with the same attention she brought to everything, full, patient, not demanding anything back from it. I've been doing this for 8 years, I said, pointing people to the window, showing them where to stand. I know. No one's ever pointed back before. She looked at the photograph in my hands, then at me. I know, she said. That's why I printed it. I set the folder on the table beside the graph paper. Outside the ridge was doing what it did in January, holding the light at a low angle that made everything look like it had been waiting. 2 bedrooms, she said. 2 bedrooms, I said. In case. You said that last year. I meant it last year. She looked at me. Do you still mean it? I looked at her at the threshold of a cabin she'd first arrived at, holding a reservation she hadn't expected to share. A year later, standing in the same doorway, the same ridge light through the south window, the photograph of me looking at the light sitting on the table between us. No, I said. I don't still mean it. She stepped in. I closed the door. The ridge held its light until 4 o'clock, the way it always did in January. Neither of us was looking at it.